Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second formal session of the Customer and Support Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee's inquiry into working with and developing local supply chains. My name is Martin Eddy. I'm the Cornwall Councillor for the St Cleer Division, and I'm joined by three of my fellow councillors here today as part of the inquiry panel. Councillors Mould, Keeling and Moorcroft. Councillors, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, thanks, Martin. Hello, Carol Mould. I'm the Cornwall Councillor for the St Minver and St Endelian Division.
John? John, would you like to introduce yourself? John Keeling?
He's making a
Sorry, I thought I was. Yeah, I'm John Keeling. I'm the Cornwall Councillor for the division of Brieg, Gurmo and Sifney here in the Far West. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Robin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Robin Moorcroft, Cornwall Councillor for Weybridge West, celebrating my 1 year as a councillor a couple of days ago.
Well done. Well done. Thank you. We're expecting Councillor Frost to join us, but he's delayed for a moment, so we'll welcome him when
I am
he
here.
arrives. You've arrived. Welcome, Lee.
I have just arrived. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to duck out halfway through because, as you know, lockdown has made work unmanageable. Let's just say that.
Yeah, okay. We appreciate your time here today and your experience as a local businessman as well. Do you just want to say where you're representing, Lee?
Yeah, my name's Lee Frost and I represent Bodmin St Petrock.
Lovely, thank you, councillors. We've also got Councillor Kirkham in attendance as an observer, and over this inquiry we seek really over a number of sessions to look at how Cornwall Council sources its suppliers, to look at any issues they have in supplying the council through their eyes. We want to understand how social value is currently introduced into and measured in our contracts. And we wish to explore what other local authorities are doing to enhance social value and address climate change in their procurement process. We hope our work will produce some recommendations to Council around its operating models, around key performance indicators and possible changes to our contract procedure rules. Today's session is being recorded but not transmitted live. The recording will be made available to the public to view online. I'm grateful for Sarah, who's in attendance in replacing Robert Buckley, for her support during this session. Sarah Wilson, thank you. And this session must be framed within the COVID-19 crisis. We're in a second lockdown as we meet. That is pulling staff away from their normal jobs, both here and in other local authorities. And we as a council are in a period of change as we shift to outcome-based budgeting, delivering a new target operating model for procurement and a complete overhaul of contract procedure rules. This inquiry is also being integrated with Councillor Kirkham and Desmond's motion to council around Cornwall Council procurement rules and Cornwall suppliers. So we appreciate the work of officers to get us to the start line here, and we must also mention Tracy Clark, who does an enormous amount of work behind the scenes. Thank you, Tracy. Just to noise up, councillors, our next session will be on Thursday the 26th of November, when we'll be talking to other councils, and so far Bristol and North East Somerset, Wiltshire, Plymouth City Council and Manchester City Council will be talking to us. So today we'll be interviewing 4 witnesses. You've had the timings circulated earlier, and I hope we will run to time, but if we do run over time, I will ask the witnesses to submitted written answers to those questions that don't get asked. And members, please feel free to ask a supplementary. We will try and keep to time, but if there's a burning issue, please ask a supplementary question. And also time is allowed at the end for observers to have some input after we've stopped this recording. So we'll conclude with some reflections on the day's session at that point. So members, if you're ready, is Chanel Busby with us? Yes. Good morning.
Yes,
Good afternoon, sorry.
Good
Chanel,
afternoon, everyone.
can you hear us? All right.
Yeah, I can.
Thank you, Chanel. Chanel, I've got a little biog here. It says 15 years experience of working at district level, leading the operational and strategic side of the procurement function and managing supplier engagement and tender activity. So you have a lot of experience, and that we hope that we can unlock some of that knowledge you have and help to influence the way we operate here in Cornwall Council. So I've said a few words about yourself, but would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so as I said, Chanel Busby, I currently am the service lead for procurement and commercial at Exeter City Council. I've been in this role for a couple of years now, coming into Exeter at a point where when they didn't really have a procurement team. So it's been quite a steep sort of workload in the last couple of years, really bringing things in, embedding the basics really, and trying to get us to a point where most other councils already were, and now looking to sort of go beyond that in terms of moving forward with the social value, the net carbon zero and other objectives that our council has, as do all councils going forward. I also play an active role in the regional procurement networks, so South West Procurement Board, the Devon and Cornwall Procurement Partnership, and also I am the South West representative for the National Advisory Group for Procurement, which is run by the LGA. So I've got a pretty good network in place in terms of talking about social value, understanding what's going on with social value around not just our region, but nationally. So.
Great. Well, I look forward to our conversation. Well done. Thank you. Carol, you want to kick off the questioning, please?
Hello, Chanel. Hello,
Hi.
can you hear me? Hi there. Your discussions at the procurement board, could you just give us some info about what discussions you have and how best you think to go about developing the local markets, including the voluntary and the community and social enterprise sections?
Yeah, so I can't say that we've had a specific discussion around market development at the South West Procurement Board. It's something that kind of market engagement is something that we've tried to do over the last 4 to 5 years really. We've sought to engage local supply markets through things such as we've done supplier events, engagement that way, followed up with sort of surveys and things like that, and we've tried to feature those events to be around specific topics, to try and sort of help and inform the suppliers, as well as engaging them and understanding their requirements. Also to inform them around things like, for instance, one year we did one that was we really engaged with those sort of framework providers, which is a framework is a predefined list of suppliers that lots of councils will use to procure goods and services rather than going out to market openly. Now, often those frameworks, if they're sort of national frameworks, then the suppliers who are on those frameworks and who have got onto those frameworks will be possibly big national providers rather than the local businesses that we're all quite keen to engage with. So we focused our event last year around inviting along the framework providers and sort of opening up the discussion between local businesses and framework providers around how you can get onto frameworks and how you can become a framework provider, which then subsequently enables you to supply your local council or other public sector organisation. So that's, I would say, the main, from on a kind of regional basis, or Devon and regional, what we've looked to do is supplier engagement. We know there's more to do. There's always more to do. There has been some discussion and some initial meetings on and I think it's been branded as the written down here, the Devon system procurement. So some leaders in Devon have kind of got together and said we need to look at a more broad brush approach to procurement and supplier engagement. And the two main activities that have come out of those meetings so far are a piece of sort of a bit of a task and finish group, if you like, to better understand the barriers that suppliers perceive. This is obviously specific to Devon, but this is the barriers that suppliers in Devon perceive around engaging with councils, and also getting a broader understanding in a joined up way of what suppliers we've got in the region. So that's the sort of two themes that Devon Systems group is seeking to sort of achieve. I guess the risk is always that all of these groups, there's lots of groups and lots of things going on, and it's just trying to have a joined up approach to it, really.
So sorry, can I just come back? So the events and surveys that you did, were you happy with the response you got, or not so good, or good, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was good engagement. We always get good engagement at the events. I think sometimes there's it's probably just the same old story everywhere, really. We're left sort of thinking, oh, there's so much more we could be doing, but it's having the resource and the capacity to do that, because obviously, first and foremost, in a lot of procurement teams, they're focusing on procuring contracts and just getting those contracts in place and compliant and delivering the services, and doing this extra work, which is absolutely fundamental, and we need to do it, and we all want to do it, but it's sometimes, unfortunately, the teams just aren't big enough to really build on it. So that's another good reason why we work together, because that helps. We take it in turns to host the event, so every council's not having to do their own event. It's something that we can share around, and the collaboration there is really beneficial. But sadly, I think we're all, certainly speaking from my own perspective, very, very small team, and there are teams where you've just got one person looking after multiple councils. So it's really, really challenging from that perspective.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point you make there. Yeah, around resources. Robin, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Good afternoon, Chanel. Do you have any advice on how we could build social value into the tender evaluation process, please?
Well, from my perspective, and they're speaking both what we do individually, locally at my council, Exeter, but also with my kind of national advisory group hat on, I do advocate for the social value TOMS, which is the themes, outcomes and measures that have been developed by the social value portal. This is fully supported by the LGA. The chair of the LGA is actually the chair, I think, of the social value portal network, or if he's not the chair anymore, he's very sort of involved in that group. And the social value portal and the TOMS that they've developed do the job. And I think having and using those themes, outcomes and measures consistently across councils in the country will make the sort of the supplier perspective of responding to tenders which contain these measures much easier, because they're being asked the same questions. Obviously, they're not going to. What we don't want to encourage is them just pulling an answer off the shelf that they use every single time. But I don't think social value leads itself to that anyway, because obviously we're all working in our own unique geographical areas, and that's where we're looking for them to add the social value. So I think ultimately supporting and adopting those TOMS is the way forward, really.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. John, would you like to pick up the train?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Good afternoon, Chanel. I would like to ask you the following. Do councils and contractors all use the same definition of social value? Do you think an understanding of what it is has been sufficiently developed in pre-contract discussions?
It's an interesting one. Obviously, I can't speak on behalf of all councils and all contractors, but I would suggest that yes, there could well be a lack of understanding in terms of what we're talking about with social value, and I think that's not just in relation to the the procuring officers. I think that could be, you know, further up the chain in relation to the management and the councillors of the councils to sort of have their own perception of what that might be. And I think further training and advice or guidance on that would be really beneficial throughout procuring organisations. From a contractor point of view, obviously that's harder for me to comment on, but I think it's something to be considerate of, definitely. I think if the questions are asked in the right way in the tender, then the contractors shouldn't necessarily need to have that broad, in-depth understanding, because we want them to focus on being experts in delivering what they're delivering, not being and in order to do that incorporating some social value into our contract. But I don't know that we necessarily need them to be social value experts, so to speak. It's definitely more developing that expertise in the organisation, which I think is probably missing in my experience. Obviously, I can't speak on behalf of all organisations.
Yeah, do you think it should be intuitive? That's with the contracts. Yeah. And I do like your point of the councillors. The councillor have to understand that as well. So that's a good point.
And I think it varies from. Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Yeah, you were saying.
I was just going to say, I think it varies from council to council as well in terms of the, the political drivers of those councils. So myself, I work for Exeter City Council, which is a Labour-led council. So there's quite the perception of a lot of my members around what social value is it's around local jobs for local people, and a lot of the real living wage elements and things like that for my council, because that is their sort of more broader priorities in terms of their political persuasion. So I guess that could have an impact, but I'm not a politician, so I don't want to comment too much on that side of things.
I'm pretty sure there's a common theme there across all parties, actually. Getting work for our local people is something we're all strong about. Thank you.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Chanel. Lee, are you here? I know you got called away. Perhaps then I'll ask Lee's question, if I may. Chanel, do you have any advice on how we could build social value into the contract management process?
I think it comes back to the TOMs again, really. I think they are developed to be able to be used as key performance indicators within your contract management process. So it's about having that clearly defined at the front end when you're procuring the contract. What are the parameters? What are the social value drivers that we're looking to include in this contract? And then it's about having the consistency and following them up throughout your process. And I know Cornwall's quite advanced from my dealings with Sarah and hearing about what's going on at Cornwall. I know they're quite advanced in terms of their processes that they have in place. And I think that's exactly the way to go and have it. We're nowhere near that point, unfortunately, at Exeter, but that's the obvious way of ensuring that you're having that delivery of social value throughout the contract, is following up on those criteria throughout the contract management process.
Yeah, it's a good point. Thank you. Yeah, that's the following up what was promised in the contract. And also we're, on a journey towards net carbon zero. How does that integrate in there as well? Is that delivered through, the policies of the contractor, or how is that dealt with?
Yeah, it's the same. Well, from a procurement and contract management perspective, it's the same. Any criteria in relation to your contract that need to be set out in your contract, and then they need to be followed up in your contract management. So absolutely, it's the net carbon zero is very much something we're all talking about. I think we're not quite as advanced with that as we are with the social value, although clearly the two are inextricably linked in many ways, because a lot of the social value stuff, so to speak, is going to help in terms of sustainability and making contracts more efficient. and sustainable. So I think yeah, it's the same process from a procurement person's perspective, regardless of whether we're talking about how they're going to deliver the contract, how they're going to deliver social value, or how they're going to deliver carbon net zero. We're using the same process throughout.
I'm just wondering whether the contractor themselves state that they're on a journey to reduce the amount of carbon in the way they operate, whether that is an important factor, or actually whether it is built into the contract that they would try and offset the carbon emissions of their operation. That was just, are we content? Are we? Is the kind of say an ISO, I don't know, what is it now, 14,001, something like that within a contract? Does that give extra weight in towards someone who's operating in a way that's reducing their carbon output? I was just curious as to whether it puts emphasis on the type of contractor we're looking for, or whether it's actually within the contract itself to offset carbon output.
I think it's an interesting consideration, and I think I'm thinking on the hop here, but I think potential there's a risk in terms of giving a supplier extra weighting, or extra scores, shall we say, for them having a defined criteria like an ISO standard. We can't actually do that. We can ask for that, and then if they can prove or equivalent, then we have to give them the same weighting. So that's sort of procurement technicalities. But I think that's interesting, because I think often that the two are linked, but very much the first one is looking at the company in terms of as we're selecting our suppliers that we want to engage with, and the second one is looking at how they're going to deliver the contract. And those two ways of looking at anything, regardless of whether it's about sustainability, or it's about the staff that they've got within their organisation, we must define them quite separately in terms of how we procure. So anything that is about the company and what they've done up until now, and then how they operate and what they do, we consider as selection criteria, and everything about how they're going to deliver our contract is award criteria. So it's very important that we don't it's quite difficult, I suppose, to think how those two would get muddled, if you see what I mean, because we treat them separately. So we'd capture, hopefully, a supplier, if we put more emphasis on the supplier having a history of being, a good company and doing these things and having these accreditations, they'd have more chance of getting into the shortlisting of the suppliers we then invited to tender. But then we're back to almost 0.0 in terms of them scoring how they're going to score in the onward contract. So I suppose it's a shame, really, that they don't necessarily get credit for that. But then it goes without saying, I guess, if they are a good company and they are delivering things like that, they should be better placed to respond to our question around how are you going to deliver this in our contract, and hopefully score well on that element too. Okay,
yeah, good answer. Thank you. Good advice. Yes. Carol, would you like to?
Hi again. Hi there. Yeah, we touched on TOMs, and that I think probably we're all agreed that if everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, that's going to make life an awful lot easier. But are your members using TOMs? And if not, why not, do you think? And if so, what advantages do you think it brings? We sort of touched on this already, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose the honest answer is no, because it's just something we're very much, and I've actually literally this morning set up a meeting. Oh, my screen's gone off. Set up a meeting with the rest of my team to go through a couple of contract examples we're getting out imminently as to using the TOMs for them. Up until now, we've just had a sort of quite a generic question in our tender template, which is please define the social value advantages or benefits that you bring to this contract. So as I said, we are a bit behind at Exeter than other councils, because we've only had a procurement team for a couple of years. So in all honesty, no, we're not, but we're on the cusp of doing it. As of sort of next week, we will be. Our members are very much behind it and have asked for it to be included. In our strategy, it sets out that we will allocate at least 5% of our weighting to social value and at least 5% to sustainability. So we have been doing that, just not specifically with the TOMs, but we will be. I'm sorry, I think you had a second part of your question, but it's gone out of my mind. Oh, I think you're on.
You're on mute, Carol.
What advantages, I think.
Sorry, that was me. I muted myself. That's unusual. Sorry, it was. So sorry. Yeah, if not, why not? And if so, what advantages does it bring, really? So the answer to I think you said no, you didn't. So we're not too hot on the advantages. But if you were, what advantages do you think it would bring?
I think it just brings the ability to hone the questions you're asking more specifically to the contract you're delivering. So rather than asking that generic, what social value elements are you bringing? And they answer, oh, we employ 3 local apprentices, or, you know, which any supplier for any contract could answer. We can, the TOMs have got more defined sections and types of questions. So if we're doing a contract that's for, you know, works, then there'll be questions in there which will be more aligned to a works contract, so we can incorporate them. So I think it's about honing the questions so that we're actually so when we're going back to the previous question about delivering social value throughout the contract and the contract management, identifying it in the contract management process, we've actually got some clear things that link directly to that contract that we're asking them to deliver, rather than just generally, as a company, you know, we're employing apprentices, or, you know, which is great, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's so much more that we can be getting out of contracts, and more benefits we can be seeking, I think. So
Lovely, thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Carol. Robin, would you like to press on?
Yes. Hello again, Chanel. Do you have any systems in place, or do you have any advice on how to gather evidence and measure the delivery and impact of social value?
We don't have any systems in place. I think you've probably got the idea now that we're a little bit behind in that regard. But the intention is, again, the other benefit, I should have said that really, when we're using the TOMs, is that we will then be able to use the tool to actually identify which elements we're measuring in our contracts, and we'll be able to feed into that in terms of the contract management process, which will then give us the ongoing reporting ability in terms of what we're delivering. At the moment, we just literally have our individual contract statement, I guess, around how they're going to deliver it, and it's not necessarily translated into the contract management process that effectively. So that's the other advantage of using the TOMs, is that we've got the sort of more defined tool for doing that.
Thank you. Sorry, I must have missed the first bit. Thank you.
And John, would like to follow on, please?
Yeah, now, have you discovered any quick win areas? That's always a good question.
It is, I know, the $1 million question, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, what we're talking about really is there any specific areas where they can deliver social, economic and environmental benefits to local communities, you know, within that sort of umbrella, if you like?
I mean, the areas where it's quite easy I'm not saying quick wins, but it's quite easy to define and to measure are those contracts which are kind of already in that space in terms of delivery. So we've got a contract for what's it called? Like, it replaces a citizen's advice, basically. I mean, the CAB actually won it, but that's the contract. It's the advice services. We've got an element, one that's for individuals, and then we've got another one that's actually for businesses, a startup and other businesses. So obviously the nature of those contracts, they're already kind of in that space because they're actually looking to deliver benefits to local businesses and you know, social and economic benefits. That's the point of them. So obviously those contracts, it's been really, I say easy, but that's been to translate the ethos of social value into them, because that's what they are based around. So that's probably the best answer I can give on that one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, basically, it could be a tick box area where you just tick off whether it's environmental, how it affects the social, and also the environmental side of it. And I can't see it all happening in one go, because that's not the nature of business, isn't it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Chanel, you've heard the drift of our questions. You've heard, and we've heard what you said, and it's been very, very helpful to our inquiry. Thank you. Are there any key points you think we should take away from this chat we've had here today?
Yeah, I think the key points that none of the questions really picked out, but in terms of sort of wider benefits to social value in sort of perhaps thinking about it more on a regional basis, I think that the challenge that we face as sort of coal-faced procurement people is that I talked earlier a little bit about the fact there are lots of groups sort of talking about this, and that might just be amongst procurement people, that might be amongst your economic development teams, it could be at a higher level. But I think what we really would welcome is kind of a broader sort of look at strategic policies and objectives in relation to this, because I think in terms of, and I'm talking from a district council perspective, we're trying to work with other councils in my region, but I think it's sometimes hard enough just to engage and work with your neighbouring, your economic development team who are within your same council. So when it comes to kind of trying to align and do things in a similar manner to those in other councils, that brings challenges. So I think that would be something that as someone doing the job, it would be beneficial if there was some alignment on that. And I think having an increased awareness around which you as the councillors involved in this obviously have, because of the fact you're doing this, but in other councils it would be nice if we had an increased awareness of like policy around procurement and how it links to social value and carbon net zero, because I sometimes think procurement's just thought of as a transactional service, and sort of understanding and more awareness of what they can deliver and what it can assist with delivering would be really beneficial. So that's kind of the thoughts that I had about the circumstances that we find ourselves in at the moment.
Well, that's very interesting. So it's really around moving the council culture towards thinking about sustainability and carbon zero, and seeing it as a cultural thing rather than a process thing. So a cultural element would permeate the whole organisation, whereas at the minute it feels like a process that's confined to procurement.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's been really interesting talking to you. Thank you ever so much. I'm sorry it was a bit of a grilling.
No, it's fine, thank you.
But it tends to be the nature of these inquiries. So I suppose thank you for your time. It's been enlightening. We will go away and ponder that, and we hope by Christmas we will have come up with some recommendations, certainly for this council, and perhaps looking at the broader aspects that you've brought to our thinking today. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Chanel. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye now. Thank you, members. Thank you for that. If you're happy and content, James, are you with us? Here, James.
I'm here.
Aha, there you are. Welcome.
It works.
It's always a bit of a leap of faith, Yeah, we had a parish council meeting last night, and for some reason there were two of one parish councillor there.
Double the votes.
Very confusing. James, so thank you for taking the time and accepting our invitation to come and join in with this inquiry and provide us with your thoughts and your ideas. You, of course, are a director within the Cornwall Chamber of Commerce. We sent a little, well, you've sent us a little biography here, and thank you for that. And it's interesting it will be interesting to get your thoughts on a kind of a Cornish regional and perhaps a national perspective as well. I noticed that you have responsibility to develop policies for the operation of the Chamber, to monitor the Chamber's financial health programs and overall performance. So welcome. The session will take the same format as it did before, really, a series of questions where we hope you can provide us with additional information, additional insights into what we're trying to do here. I hope I haven't stolen too much of your thunder. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. As Martin said, James Ferguson, I'm a director on the board of Cornwall Chamber of Commerce. In that, as I say, we basically, our role is to, as on the board, is to make sure that the Chamber works financially and represents the interest of all its members being the business community. We do like to think we don't just represent the people who are actual members of the Chamber, but all of the businesses within Cornwall. We also basically make sure that the Chief Executive, Kim Conchie, has the tools and resources he needs to run the Chamber. And the Chamber, as well as working as a networking and information group for businesses, is also a very strong lobbying group. So lobbying both within Cornwall and nationwide for Cornish interests and businesses, and so we have an awful lot of activity within the UK and outside the UK on behalf of Cornish businesses. I do have personally, currently, although I own and run a legal services business, a lot of my career was spent in operations and logistics for multinational companies. So I do know, although a few years removed, a fair bit about purchasing and logistics. So I think that helps bring just a little bit of more knowledge for me into this.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to ask Carol to kick off our questions, if that's all right. Carol?
Hello, James. Hello there. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. Cornwall Council and its group of companies and their approach to sourcing. Where do you consider that it's working well or not working so well?
We take it as basically feedback from our members is what we go on. And we have members who are both large companies and small companies. And the big thing about Cornwall, as you well know, is that the vast majority of businesses are micro or small. And the perception that we constantly come across is that they have no chance of getting business from Cornwall Council. That might only be a perception, but perceptions hurt people's ability to do things. But I've also had feedback from large companies who say that they find it difficult, or the process is difficult in tendering for work from the council. I've also had people saying that it isn't. Other businesses, large ones again, who say yes, it works well for them. But I tend to think what I tend to think is that if you're used to the tendering process, if you're a larger company in particular, and you know how to do tenders, you're doing them regularly, you've got people who are trained in that and know how the systems work and know what are the right and wrong things to say and put down, then it works much better for you than if you're a very small or micro business, and it can be very daunting to approach the council or approach we had a lot of complaints about the Bloom system and the fact that people found that the small businesses found it overly complex and difficult to manage. I can't speak it because I've not seen the Bloom system myself, but that was the feedback we were getting. So all in all, the feedback we get is negative, and I know the council do work hard on trying to put the message across, but I don't think it's getting through that they can. I mean, you just got to look at the figures. The figures that were put out in the motion that was put forward, stating about how many small businesses actually have worked with the council. It's only like 5% of the spend goes to businesses of less than 10 employees. And as that's the majority of the businesses here, that's something we are very keen to see change.
So it just seems that they just seem to find the whole process difficult, not just parts of it, or just the system overall, and the amount of time and effort it takes.
It's the time and effort, because micro and small businesses, everyone's doing umpteen jobs. No one's a specialist. We know that from our business. We're only a small business, and you're juggling things constantly, and that's where things drop. And I think they think it's too much hard work on a gamble, on trying to get work. And I think that puts people off. It's probably one of the reasons why there's such a low number of small companies as suppliers. And if the process could be made much more simple, if education is a big thing, I think, and it's something that the Chamber would be very keen to work with the council on, in trying to educate businesses on how to approach the council and how to get on with the council and change things.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That's really interesting. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, James. I'm looking at Robin's question. It seems very similar, Robin. Is it what you want to ask, or do you want to?
I think you're right, man. I think we've covered that about feedback or barriers they find for the tendering contracts. I think you've already answered that, James, unless there's anything else you want to add to that.
I'll just check my notes. No, I think that was about it, actually. Yeah, basically, yeah, I think that's it.
As you're saying, it's a simplification of the system that we have at the moment that is needed. Yes.
Simplification, and I was very interested in Chanel's, because I was listening in on Chanel's earlier talk, and very interested. A lot of our sort of ideas and thoughts are similar to what they are bringing in and starting in terms of holding forums, supplier forums, for example, and basically demystifying what the council is about. For example, if I can waffle on a bit, I don't know if you know, but the Chamber last month won the contract along with Truro and Penwith College to deliver the government's Business Clusters programme within Cornwall. And the Business Clusters programme is a programme where we set up, find out in areas, and it could either be geographical clusters or it could be commodity clusters. So we find out in Cornwall, where are the clusters of businesses that have skills gaps? And so there could be an industrial cluster, let's say the food sector, and we talk to them all, find out where are your skills gaps. We then work with them to find out what they need in order to take them forward, work with Truro and Penwith College, and we deliver a programme to give them the skills that they need to take it on. If that similar kind of thing could be done with what skills Cornwall needs in the future, and what the council perceives that as being, and what they're going to be buying, and what skills does the county need, then that could be done on a similar basis.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, James. If I may, just to push that a little bit further, when you talk about contracts, are you talking about contracts directly with Cornwall Council or with its group of companies? Is there?
Sorry, in what respect?
Well, we went back and we were saying that there were difficulties in some, both with large and small contractors, in obtaining work from Cornwall Council. But do you have a distinction between the procurement process of Cornwall Council and perhaps its group, as distinct from its group of companies, or
no, I don't.
Do you think they're more difficult?
That's a very good point. No, I don't. That hasn't actually come up. But that's a very good point. That's something I should actually look into.
Yeah, I mean, we would like to think it was sort of equally really hard right across all the board. Well, no, I don't know. You know what I mean. There was
Yes.
the same bars to jump over in all parts of the Cornwall Council and this group of companies.
Yeah, that's
Thank
true.
you. John, would you like to pick up the trail?
Yeah, good afternoon, James. Yeah, just a change of direction now. It's about social value. And do you think there is a common definition and understanding of social value amongst your membership? We're talking really about environmental, economic, and social issues in terms of how we get what we get from companies working with us.
Thanks, John. No, I don't believe there is, because I think we have such a diverse range of companies within Cornwall. Everything from big organisations who have lots of processes in place, and they work on it very hard, and they do it partly for the tendering process, partly because it's good for the county and for them, down to we have, which is a different set of criteria to a family business, a small family business is running. Their social values, if you ask them, I would say, would be based on their personal values and how they treat people and go on. And they might not necessarily have ever picked up any book or any instruction on what, shall we say, industry thinks social values are. So I think you've got everything in between the two, personal social values through to, shall we say, organised social values. I don't think they're too far removed, but I think you would get different answers from different people depending on the type of business it is, as in, is it a small family run, is it a big organisation, and also the area of business that they're in.
It's really about the benefits it delivers, you know.
Yes, I mean, I think people would agree there are certain very basic ones, social values like quality of work, your working environment, your quality of work, enjoying that, your standard of living, as in the wages that you're being paid, your skills, the fact that you're being given the right training to do it. Those are basic to me industry social values. And then you move on from those into perhaps softer ones, or perhaps ones that go out into the community than they are with there. But that does feedback. Just giving someone the proper wage, the proper skills, and the proper work environment does, of course, feed out into the community. But there's more can be done beyond that.
I think there's a good understanding there of what social value is, actually. You know, it strikes me. It cuts across more than just the basic stuff. It really encompasses quite a lot, really, doesn't it?
It does. And the difficulty is when you're building it into contracts, it's building in a set group of things to say these are our social mores here. This is what we're adhering to. And I do think you'd have to do it on roughly a contractual or industry basis. Because again, if you're doing a contract for something and you have a big multinational can bid for it, but also a small local company can bid for it, the small local company won't have a lot of industry recognized certificates on things necessarily, but they might be doing a really good job on a lot of the social values. So I don't have the answer sitting here.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we don't want to make it too prescriptive. Yes. Otherwise, you know, the smaller businesses will fall by the wayside, and it's up to us to sort that problem out, I think. Thank you very much, James.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you, James. Yeah, interesting how perhaps one's personal values feed through into the social values of the business. and then as the business grows, perhaps they're formalised into contractual arrangements when you provide those services. Oh yeah, okay, very interesting. Yeah,
that's another thing the council can help with in guiding businesses on how to define their social values. Just give them guidelines. As I say, I come back to work. I know it all takes time and people, but it's investing in the community and the business community. But if they can do workshops or even written things and things that can help the council, again, the chamber can help with distributing information as well. I think the council will go a long way to, as well as getting the good results, winning hearts and minds as well by going out to the community and offering the information and offering help and guidance on how to make it easier to deal with them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, some good points made there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James.
A question here, which I'll ask because I don't think Lee has managed to rejoin us. Is the Chamber of Commerce able to proactively help your members put together joint bids for suitable council contracts? And how else do you think the Chamber could help?
That's a very good. You've done that in the head. That's something I was going to ask you. You got in first. It does come back. It did remind me of actually another bar. That is, of course, another barrier I should have mentioned earlier, in the fact that some of the contracts that the council has, there are businesses in Cornwall who could deliver the outcome, but not on the scale. So they're too small to do it. And so that comes back to that Lee's question there, is if we could get a cluster of businesses, a group of businesses together to bid, then the chamber could help at the moment in a limited way. We'd have to see about funding and resourcing to do that. It would depend how much work it was, but it's something we could certainly be involved in and would be very pleased to be involved in. We do run various industry groups within the chamber, so that kind of thing would help. So if we could involve the industry group in it. For example, we've just finished doing our construction industry policy document. We just finished completing that. So we have a construction industry group, which has, on our board, we have a member of the construction industry. So there's himself, and we have other members of the construction industry, and it's different guises throughout are on that. So that kind of group could be used to help that kind of thing. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you've assembled a group of people that we could, offer advice to or guidance to, or say this is what we think social value is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And on Lee's point, saying about doing contracts, if we could get a process together, and I know subcontracting doesn't come into this particular investigation that you're doing, but something where if it's not subcontracting, let's say a group of companies coming together. Kim Conchie gave me an example the other day when I asked him about this, and he said he was talking to one of our top hotels here, and they went out to tender for their marketing budget, and they wanted someone to do all their marketing, and they wanted to use a Cornish company, but none of the Cornish companies quite hit what they needed. There's always something missing. So instead of going out of county, they approached the one that was the best of what they had, and they asked if they'd be willing to work with them in improving their company and their offering, and they helped them and helped invest in them so they could get the additional skills they needed to produce it. So if the chamber and the council could work together to identify businesses and business groups, groups of businesses that could deliver, and then find out what do they need to be able to service the council, that might be a way forward.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Thank you. I'm looking at what's now my question and wondering whether, in fact, it's been asked. Let me read it out and then we can decide whether it has been asked. Does the Chamber of Commerce or its members have any views on how Cornwall Council and its group of companies can build increased social value into its tender evaluation and contract management processes? Could build increased social value into its tender evaluation. So we've been talking about a TOMS model, which seeks to standardize the measurement of social value within contracts. It's an industry developed model. Do you have any thoughts about how we could measure social value? Or
well, the TOMS could be used in a way. You'd have to use a Cornish variant of it.
I like that.
Everything's different here. But you could use a variant of it, and I say, as we discussed earlier, I think we would have to look at it per industry or per contract in a way, or group of contracts, and because I don't believe there is a one size fits all. Will cover everything that because the range of things that the council has to procure is vast. There's not many businesses that have to buy the kind of things that a council has to buy, and especially not a unitary one. So it has to be treated as different, as Cornwall Council being different companies almost, and these are the different kind of businesses we deal with. So I think the TOMS model, part of it, yes, but adapted to circumstances.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Carol, do you want to pick up the reins?
Okay. Yeah, this sort of feeds into that a bit, doesn't it? Because then that begs the question, do you think that social value outcomes should be delivered by all contracts or just those above a certain value? Whether we make a difference?
I would think to an extent all contracts, because on some contracts it can be softer. Perhaps I can't think of instances at the moment, but there are some contracts, for example, where what you actually do doesn't really impact much you couldn't make much of an impact whatever you're delivering. If you built these things in, it might be an awful lot of work for very little gain on the social impact that it would have. So I think again you'd have to have a tiered approach on what it would be. Some other things would be very heavily weighted against, should we say, I would think, depending on the impact. The impact they might have, shall we say, on the environment, it might be, or the potential impact it could have, might be heavily weighted that way. But on bigger contracts as well, it might have a really big impact on people's standards of living, on what's happening in their community. And so it's a different set of mores you'd have to put in there to make sure those were delivered.
I suppose it's back to the small companies looking at these contracts and thinking, well, you know, how much effort am I, as you rightly said just now, how much effort am I putting in for what I'm getting out? And it seems to me that if the council wants to attract more of these smaller companies, we do need a complete step change, really, from what you're saying.
Yes, I think the figures speak for themselves. You know, we don't have a lot of company. The majority of business, I think, almost, if you take the Corsair group out of it, I mean, the majority of business goes out of Cornwall from the council, and it's finding ways. And I don't know what the figures are like. I don't even know how accurate the figures are. And this isn't a complaint, because they've got to be measured somehow. Because the unit of measure is you must have an office registered in Cornwall, isn't it? But I don't know how accurate that is in terms of where the actual work is taking place. Because there might be an office in Cornwall, but everything is done by workers somewhere else in the country, and the stuff delivered here. To me, that if that kind of weighting should be built in, which is environmental and social. More than something which you're just going to be getting something from round the corner.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Thanks, James. Robin, do you want to round us off here?
Yes, I will, Martin. Are there any other key points that you think we should be aware of, James? Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I just think would like to reiterate that I think it's going to be down to communication with business from the council. And we've got a two-way street, but for the council to get out and really integrate with the business community and educate the business community. And if it could be done, if I don't know how, if they on a business support schemes, which the council do run business support schemes, if they could be changed direction slightly, and so some of the effort put into more working with businesses, then, and with organisations, not just with the Chamber of Commerce, for example, with the FSB, for example, and with all the other few business organisations, and with the education sector as well. And the other point I wanted to make was if the council could, when it does get this wonderfully right, or on its journey, bring in the other key institutions in the county to your way of thinking, and bring in the education institutions, the health service, the other big players that make up in general the mass of the economy of Cornwall. Okay,
thank you. And I'm sorry if I just come back with a question, if you may have touched on this, I'm sorry. What do you think, what can using Cornish providers offer for Cornwall that big national companies can't that could help us draft our social value goals?
One of the several things, one of the social value, one of the first things on environment, hopefully a lot of the stuff would be shortening supply chains as much as possible, is one of the things within Cornwall. Raising the skills levels in Cornwall, because in a lot of cases, if people can't get the work, if we're stagnating as the smaller and medium-sized businesses, people won't be investing in their workforce and in their company. And the more Cornish companies can be used and those Cornish companies can grow, then they can then have the confidence, have the skill sets to get work from other businesses and other organisations within Cornwall. And this goes outside of localism, but from outside of Cornwall as well, turning on its head if they wanted to make a raid into Devon, for example. Yes, they'd be able to get work in other ways as well if they have the investment, and with the advantage of having contract work with or being able to get contract work with the Cornwall Council, that gives them an extra bit of security, an extra bit of income, gives them the drive to move on. And with you introducing the social element to it, also gives them the further incentive to, if they're not doing it already, increase their action with their staff and their community, and increasing their social output.
Great, thank you very much, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's been a fascinating session, James. Thank you. And thank you for an honest conversation with us. It's exactly what we wanted to hear. There's a lot of food for thought there, and one of the things I'm emerging is that this enhancing the social value in contracts is not something that we as a council alone can do across Cornwall. It has to be a culture of shortening supply chains, and, raising social value and keeping the money circulating with the economy down here. What you've said has struck a real chord certainly in myself today. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And I thank you on behalf of the other councillors here. We will be now having a little break. Just after the break, you're very welcome to stay, James. We've got Helen Boardman from the VCS and Neil McInroy, sorry, Chief Exec of the Centre for Local Economic Strategies on after the break.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. I know Neil, so.
Okay.
But thanks very much.
Okay, thank you for your time today. Much appreciated. Councillors, we are now programmed, got a break. We're a little ahead of ourselves. We've got a break programmed until 2:25. So shall we give ourselves a 15 minutes? I had 10 minutes for lunch. I might go back and finish my lunch. Shall we reassemble at 2:20, if that's all right? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Carol, are you still there?
I think she signed off.
I think she's probably gone for a cuppa, isn't she? Yeah, no worries.
I'm here. I'm here.
Still there.
All right.
Just a reminder that it's still being recorded, although you're on a break.
I'll keep it brief then. Carol, are you still there?
Yep.
Richard rang me earlier about the network meeting tonight, asking that if there was a question about the local policing and resources, and he asked, I said to him that I've got a question that I'm going to put to them, told him what it was, and he was going to support it. Just to let you know that I'll be asking that tonight.
Okay, lovely. All right, Robin, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, so I know you're chair, aren't you?
Oh God, yeah, I got the important job tonight.
No.
Oh.
Hello, Helen.
Hello.
Hello, Helen. It's Tracy Clark. Just to say that the councillors are just on a short break for the moment, and they'll be back at 2:20.
Well, that was a good time to join them, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Lovely. I'll come back at 2:20, Tracy.
Okay, lovely. All right, then we'll see you then, Helen.
See you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, Tracy. All right.
Hello, Martin. Helen did come on about 1:15, and I just said to her you were just on a short break and you'd be back about 2:20. So she went again to come back.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've sent you a message. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but
No.
yeah, just to say that if Helen's questions go quickly, I don't think we can get Neil on before 3 because he said he wouldn't be available until 3, didn't he? So, but it may, if there is a gap, you might want to bring forward the seminar views.
We could do that, yes, and we will.
Oh, I think
have a
Helen's
discussion in advance of Neil joining us.
Helen's
okay,
just
thank you.
Yes.
In,
so I'll admit her now.
Say again.
Helen's just coming back through the meeting lobby, the technical meeting lobby. Hello, Helen.
Hello again.
We have a lobby, Helen.
Oh, you got a lobby. That's
Very
nice.
technical. Hello, I'm Martin Eggy.
Hello, Martin.
Yeah, I've just been recently decorated.
Martin, your signal's not great there.
Hello, Helen.
Hello, Martin.
Okay.
You've gone a bit blurry.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, but your screen's quite static, so it might help turning your camera off. Sometimes it does. Right.
I don't know if that's
that's improved a bit.
The great irony is we were having.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got 5 into the house tomorrow. So I hope this might cure this problem. Right, I'm going to make a start. Can I do a roll call? Carol, are you here? Carol?
Yeah, sorry, I am, Martin. I couldn't get me doodah over the what's it. I am here. Hello.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, okay. John and Robin?
Yeah, my doodah and what's it are working fine, Martin.
John.
Present and correct.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, welcome, Helen. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. What great conversation so far this afternoon. We're looking forward very much to talking to you. I'm looking at your biography, and I'm struck that Helen is passionate about helping to develop social infrastructure to improve communities for active citizenship (civic engagement) as a way to increase social capital within communities. Yeah. And this is where she focused most of her efforts during her career. Perfect. Well done. There'll be a series of questions posed by the members. Sorry, Lee Frost can't join us this afternoon, but would you like to introduce yourself and state a bit about the Voluntary Sector Forum? Thank you.
Yeah, I'd really welcome the opportunity. So I joined day 1 of the first lockdown. And my job was to focus on supporting the voluntary sector to navigate through the emergency as well as possible, and to provide this sort of intelligence interface between the Cornwall Council governance system around the pandemic and the sector. And if you recall, at the time there were around 12 cells, and each of them had a sort of different topic area. So I came in with that sort of assignment, and I didn't have an induction, much of one, because I hit the ground running. And I then learned the charity is 25 years old. It came out of CRCC, Cornwall Rural Charities, and community charities. And 25 years ago, as a piece of work that was lottery funded and grew into its own entity, But in the last couple of years had fallen on a bit of hard times, and so I was appointed to revitalise the charity, essentially. But all that was sort of abandoned when the pandemic hit, and as I say, I was asked to concentrate on supporting the sector through the emergency and supporting obviously its beneficiaries and those that are most vulnerable in communities most at risk. So that's what I've been doing in the last now 7.5 to 8 months. And my way of engaging with the sector was to create an alliance model. So I pulled together a strategic alliance of 16 chief execs and the faith sector, and I chair that alliance called Vera, and we met 4 times a week initially, but we're now down to fortnightly, and we cover off the topics of priority. They then chair those 16, call them system leaders for their own particular part of the system, their own thematic alliance, so they've brought the rest of the sector together in their system. So we've got a number of thematic alliances. We've got 7 underway now, and we aim to get 16. And I also chair a core local alliance of voluntary sector leaders from places across Cornwall, 19, and network areas, and I meet with them as a core local alliance. And then I report up into Cornwall Council, into the health system, and also up to the Southwest through the Red Cross Southwest Emergencies Partnership, where we all share intelligence, myself and my peers, my equivalents across the Southwest, around the needs of the sector. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of what I do day to day.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's you sound in a wonderful place to give us a view, a very broad view of the people from yourself and those that you work with. We're going to pose a series of questions, as you know. We're looking into enhancing the social value within our contracts and enhancing how we work with yourselves. And my first question is with regard to Cornwall Council and its group of companies and their approach to sourcing. Where would you consider it's working well, and where would you say it's not working so well?
I think it works well when the council have a really good understanding of the supply in the particular sector that it's looking for them from the voluntary sector's perspective. According to the Charity Commission, we've got 38 sectors across 2,500 charities. So when the council really understands what's available in Cornwall and has existing relationships with them already, has that social capital in terms of that relationship and that trust and that rapport, and has a really good grasp of the sector's potential. They know obviously like in terms of best practice, and they've got some eye to the horizon around the next practice developing around the solutions that they're looking for. And when they go in really well informed because of the ongoing two-way dialogue where they've led and they've learned in a peer-to-peer sort of approach, and it's balanced, I think then they're in a really good place to identify the sorts of things that they need to purchase and how the models that need to be used, the beneficiary needs that will be met and the outcomes they want to achieve. And it's done in concert. So there's a real synergy between what they hope to achieve and the priority, etc. And there's like a single framework, for example, of outcomes. So there's a real just common, shared, open, transparent understanding of what's required. The relationships are good. There's a lot of social capital to draw on, and everybody's sort of in a good position to get going. And I think it works in that respect, but it's got to be that supplier relationship, as you might call it, has got to be, you've got to create the conditions for that to thrive. It can't be disjointed ad hoc piecemeal as and when. It has to be an investment into the sector in an ongoing way. They're more than the contract you commission. There's so much more value. There's so many more assets and strengths. So I think we concentrate on what is strong. And if we concentrate on what is strong and develop that and play to those strengths, then, we can stretch that and get bigger bang for our buck. It doesn't work well when it's time-bound, ad hoc, siloed, where there's unnecessary competition leading to division, petty rivalry, where people are protecting their intellectual property because they fear it being stolen, where there may be experiences in the past that haven't properly been addressed and there's a little bit of resentment or mistrust. So it doesn't work well when the conditions lean more towards it not being joined up, a bit of a power imbalance, more about output driven, all about one-sided performance on the sector. So there's no real partnership. And you may not get through that co-analysis in terms of your sourcing, you may not get the best insight and the best specification, really. So yeah.
You're breaking up a bit. The internet connection here is terrible and getting worse. So this idea of equality in what you bring, equality, respecting each other as partners in a venture, almost a co-design. Is that what we're talking about? Is that too strong a term, or?
No, it's absolutely. I think it's got to be co-analysis. I sit now in lots of boards. I'm very privileged to have such breadth of insight now across health and care. And I'm fascinated by the data sets that the public sector have, and they're now started to compare, contrast, combine them. But the sector don't have access to that to the extent they need, possibly. And similarly, the place-based co-analysis, the testing of assumptions, the merging and integration of intelligence and insight, and a different perspective, looking through a different lens, it's not often done. So I think it's crucial there's a co-analysis pre to a co-design of a product that we think is going to achieve those outcomes.
Okay, so I'm just making some notes as we're going along here. Thank you. A very important point there, the co-analysis. Robin, would you like to pick up the questioning?
I will. Thank you, Martin. Hello, Helen. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I asked a similar question to our previous speaker, James, and it'd be interesting to see if we get a similar answer. It might give us some more direction for the future. Do your members report any difficulties or barriers they find with tendering for contracts with Cornwall Council or its group of companies? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, well, interestingly, we had a discussion at Vera, the Strategic Alliance, about 3 months ago around this topic area. And I shared all of the findings with our council colleagues. And essentially, the barriers tend to be towards the contract value. It's not enough in terms of full cost recovery, and it tends to be, according to my members, static. It doesn't rise with the inflation, cost of living, real living wage, etc. So it's fixed for 6 years, and it's output driven. Often it's based on a number of key KPIs instead of outcomes. It tends to be short term. It tends to be a 3+3+1, lots of contract breaks clauses that are seen to be one-sided. So yeah, there seems to be, in terms of this supplier commissioner relationship split, seems to be there's a power imbalance. It doesn't seem to be like a peer-peer, sort of an honest, if we're underperforming or not meeting targets, why, the context, what can we both do to sort of improve. It doesn't seem to be joined up strategically, so there could be a lot of duplication in the system, lots of back office stuff that could have been joined up. So and yeah, okay, I think and again, it sets the sector up for competition as opposed to collaboration. And obviously it is a competitive process, but there's a lot on the outside of that process before it gets to procurement that could be more leaning towards collaboration. So there needs to be a cultural shift and there needs to be some reality in terms of full cost recovery and the staticness of the value, the envelope, and the KPIs, inordinate amount of KPIs, but no real outcome sort of model.
Okay, great. If I could just come back with another short question. So to help us define social value, what can Cornwall Council, working with the voluntary sector, do for Cornwall and its citizens that using big national companies cannot, do you think?
I think, so just to define it from my perspective, I used Somerset Government's definition, which says the additional benefit to the community from the commissioning procurement process over and above the direct purchase of goods, services and outcomes. And therefore it's sort of social, environmental and economic value. And I think I attended the Cabinet Office, as that short biog said, Commissioning Academy. And I was taught that commissioning can be done at no cost, which shocks people, or very low cost, which surprises people because they often see it as coterminous or interchangeable with procurement. And if we do see commissioning can be done at no cost or low cost, do we believe that the sector can co-commission its own outcomes and direct its own destiny in that way? And if we believe that commissioning is just good leadership, couldn't there be a way of leading and learning together in a more balanced way? Because I think if you just see the sector as a supplier for that contract, and there may be multiple commissioners commissioning one organisation and it's not particularly strategically aligned, then you may be missing the social value that they bring for all of the other work that they do, and the way that they can be working with you to create jobs, for example. I've just made some sort of areas where they can really work with you. So skills and training opportunities. There's a big campaign at the moment in terms of the care sector, but it is really a recruitment drive for the public sector, health and care, and it's not considered there's 50 not-for-profit care providers out there, along with 3 big care home providers, and they're doing parallel recruitment drives. So it's like joining up that job creation and joining up the skills and training opportunities. There's a ton of stuff that they can do there. That recent Simon Reeve programme on Sunday talked about you can get a job in Cornwall, but you can't have a career, and your best bet is to leave when you're young. Well, we can do a lot with those hard to reach, more disaffected, disadvantaged groups that we are best placed to work with at a grassroots level, and we can really upskill and engage them. I mentioned civic engagement, active involvement, citizenship and civic duty. We can do a lot around really investing back into Cornwall and changing mindsets, and them investing in their future and the future of their children. Work placements, seeing the sector as a vocational pathway and a long-term career. Fighting climate change together. We're really good at campaigning and lobbying. We're really flexible and creative and innovative and entrepreneurial. We can do a ton of stuff in a very agile and adaptable way there, and drive equality of opportunity for the hard to reach. And also around community wellbeing, reducing crime, improving health. Again, if we believe it's everybody's business and there should be no passive bystanders, more again engaging the community to invest in themselves, having safer, more resilient, more cohesive communities where we are together building social capital, because we know when that's high, crime is low. And then supporting the recovery from COVID. We've got a long upward trajectory, haven't we? And we need the community to buy into the recovery process as well. And I think we've seen that through the benevolence of volunteers, the active citizens, the wanting to get stuck in. And I think volunteer passports, and for example, in the voluntary sector, there's 87,000 volunteers, according to Charities Commission data, amongst our 2,500 charities, who employ 10,000 staff. And I think it's just rich with assets and strengths, and I've seen that in the 7 months I've been here. We've now got 40 voluntary sector organisations actively involved week to week in this process of recovery at no cost. I mean, obviously it's coming from somewhere. Some might be time from the council in terms of contracts, but not all of it. And there's a real appetite to really increase social value. And I think this is an opportunity for Team Cornwall to go to another level here with the sector. If they could consider the sector not as the afterthought, but its first thought in terms of its not-for-profit, believe it to be excellent, not third sector, third rate. If we could recognise them and affirm them and bring them into the system properly to have that two-way dialogue, that two-way relationship, address that imbalance, I think we could do so much together. The appetite and the wherewithal is there. We just need the opportunities.
Yeah, great, thank you. I did see the Simon Reeve programme. It was quite an eye-opener, very interesting, and I wish you all the best in your role. Thank you very much, Helen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Thanks, Robin. The Simon Reeve programme, I think, is the first part of 2 parts, and there's a second part to come out as well. But John, would you like to pick up the reins,
Good
please?
afternoon, Helen.
Good afternoon, John.
You know, it's quite clear from what you just said that your understanding of social value is very, very high. But I must ask, do you think there is a common definition and understanding of social value amongst your membership? And you have to bear in mind, of course, that social value must be a priority for those who spend public money. But it would be satisfying if you could tell me there was a common definition amongst your membership.
I don't think it's part of everyday conversations, John. I think individual organisations might be clued up, but this process alone has really got my attention now in terms of what the changes are in January, how the sector things could be levelled up for the sector and social enterprise. So I'm going to give it some proper attention and communication around it and bring it into our conversations, because I don't think it's a common topic of conversation, and I think you get different definitions and understanding, and probably some saying, oh, the Social Value Act, it's tokenistic, it's it's not really, something that we're actively trying to generate social value in communities. There is something called the Social Value Engine, which some local authorities are using. I've only had a quick look at it. It looks really exciting. And I think there's a big piece of work for us in the sector, I think, to really see this as how we articulate this well to you and to others. So I think, there's work to be done, but there'll be individual organisations who do have a real firm grasp of its meaning and are applying it in their bids.
Yeah, I just see it as a good use of public money in terms of the environment, social and economic. I see it that way. But I certainly value the work of your group of people anyway. It's marvellous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, John. Carol, you want to jump in here, please?
Yes. Hello, Helen. Hi.
Hi, Carol.
Hello. We sort of touched on this a bit, but so does the Voluntary Sector Forum have any views on perhaps how Cornwall Council and the group and its group of companies could build increased social value into its tender evaluation and contract management process?
Yeah, I mean, I think we offered Rachel Rotherhoe the opportunity to come together to form a joint working group, which would obviously, this could be a key component part to it. We've got all those chief execs and local leaders available who'd really love to have a conversation about how they are adding social value to really raise consciousness and areas which are still untapped. I was talking to Carolyn Cadman from the Cornwall Wildlife Trust, who's on the Alliance, and she's just unfortunately failed with a bid around green prescriptions, which is just giving people more access to nature to improve their well-being, and and in a kind of non-clinical therapeutic way. And I think if we tapped into a conversation like that and really really dug deep into that conversation, I think you'd be delighted at how much social value is there and how much social value could be there. But I think it starts with again that sort of co-analysis, that shared understanding, and just to sort of, like, some of it could be done at, like I say, no cost, because like the Cornwall we want and the work you're doing. Sometimes we're second guessing where you're going, your strategic direction of travel, and sometimes we do feel a little bit outside the system, the core system, and those with contact points maybe have a contract, but there's lots of people who, like Cornwall Disability Disability Cornwall, don't have a contract with the council, but they're very, very active in terms of this area of work and improving employment prospects amongst the disabled, etc., and their social connection, etc. So I just think we're at the beginning of what feels like a really exciting journey, Carol, and one where we're really keen to sort of get on board. And so we all have this common understanding, and we all know what we could be doing at no cost together. And I'd be really excited to get behind getting the community, the individual beneficiaries in each of these organisations and the wider community really engaged in adding social value to Cornwall. So, I mean, just hopefully projecting that there's a lot of enthusiasm, but we do need a bit of a forum and a vehicle to be doing this together.
Yeah, that's very much what it sounds like. It sounds like the coming together is going to completely enhance the social value anyway. You're going to get a double bang for your buck almost, aren't you, by working more closely together?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Thanks, Helen, for that very interesting reply, I've got to say. Is there a role for your members to deliver social value on behalf of our contractors? And have you had any experience of the establishment of social funds as part of lodge contracts?
The first part of the question, I think, you know, this sort of social responsibility bit, you know, for some of your big commercials. I'm thinking of an example where you've got a contract with your waste removal company, but I can't think of its name at the moment. You're the one that you use. As you can see, I've only been in Cornwall 3 years, so I'm still familiarising myself with certain organisations. But these organisations who collect waste every day, for example, when you start thinking about that in terms of domestic abuse or things that they're seeing around the homes that they're becoming obvious, that may be a concern there may be substance misuse or neglect, or there may be obvious signs of abuse. We're trying, the domestic abuse sector is trying to make domestic abuse reporting at everybody's business, so there's no, like I said, passive bystander. And these companies that are in people's lives every day, the postal worker, the hairdressers, the waste collection companies, those more commercial organisations, they could do with a bit of education about how, you know, to ask a question or to make a report, or to, you know, to sort of what you do in a circumstance if you found yourself in this. So there's a bit that the sector can do in terms of awareness raising and upskilling and making sure their HR is, you know, domestic abuse proofed. What do you do with your staff, you know, have concerns? So there's a lot that the sector can offer there, and equally there's a lot that some commercial organisations can offer the sector. It would just depend on that sort of topic area. You know, we're a safe place to do placements, for example, with the really furthest from the employment market, the ones that need a lot of work, a lot of youth work engagement, essentially coaching and mentoring and prepping up before they could put themselves in front of an employer, and to work with them and role play and have them come in and speak and have them, you know, increase aspiration amongst some of the beneficiaries we have. I mean, I just think there's tons and tons of stuff that we could do together, should we again have that forum where we could have that two-way dialogue and we could look for opportunities. You know, things like acquisitive crime, I think that's on the increase reportedly at the moment, and we've got Christmas just around the corner, and we're seeing it's because of increases in unemployment and seasonal work coming to an end. Well, you know, when you talk to some of the providers in the sector, they say, well, they're selling food bank items to get money, there's a bit of a black market economy going on, or we're trying to tackle substance misuse with them, but they're not thinking from the police's perspective about acquisitive crime and how they could work from that perspective as well. So it's just recognising what interventions, what we're trying to achieve, and supporting us, each one another, to achieve those outcomes.
Yeah. I've seen examples where instead of the contractor providing the social value, the community investment, that actually they put a sum of money aside for, I suppose, building community wealth, whatever you want to do with that money. But I thought there might, if there was a social fund established, I wondered if there was a role for your sector to help deliver that on behalf of the contractors.
I think they jump at the opportunity. Again, we saw with that programme, Simon Reeve, you saw wild young parents participating in that programme, didn't you? And you saw Don in the other one, the Camborne Food Bank, his private one. I mean, you know, absolutely would jump at the chance to be able to do that. How do we get the community actively involved? Because what we want is a hand up, not a handout. We want really resilient communities with resilient individuals in each and every home, knowing the part they play. We need to really granularize the vision so everybody recognises, oh, the role I play in my street, my family, my school, my home. Really get the message at that Team Cornwall that we've seen, you know, whether that is the obvious things in communities like litter or broken lights, or, you know, there's a way that the sector can really galvanise a big response, have a whole day of social action to do that beach clean or paint that bridge or repair that fence. And that intergenerational near neighbourliness that we've seen through the pandemic, we can help to sustain that too, because it's not just for a pandemic, it's the way we are. It was just we got the opportunity in those conditions to be more of who we are. And we can do that. We can drive those opportunities which involve the other suppliers. They can be absolutely part of those events, and we can show them opportunities like, you know, you saw wild young parents build a shed on an allotment. Well, there's probably lots of like wood suppliers that have loads of old wood and loads of skills sitting in that industry that young people could shadow and see, and the whole days of site visits. I mean, it's endless. There's endless opportunities that we could mine.
Yeah, yes. I can believe it. Yes, thank you. So I've not got any other questions more than are there key points that you think we should be aware of? It's your chance to kind of promulgate your view and to you know, give us some thoughts that we could take forward.
I'd love to see this cultural shift. It's the us and them, it's really hard one to swallow, and there doesn't need to be the divides between sectors, and there doesn't necessarily need to be that power imbalance that comes with purchaser supplier. I believe in servant leadership, so I believe you can't lead people you're not prepared to serve, and I think humility goes an awful long way. And I think if we could just, I know that, you know, we're not as powerful as institutions and the big leaders and the big budgets, etc., etc. We probably could compete if we combined all of it. Just under £500 million the charity sector brings into Cornwall, but it's just that opportunity to be embedded in the system. You know, I've been going around representing the sector. Well, there's a lot better placed people than me with subject expertise on children, elderly, disability that need to be at the table. There's so much that they can bring if the door is open and they're invited in and treated as equals. And I don't want to say that with a victim mentality, but I think we do need to think about that culture and how we could really play to the strengths of the sector, and not just see them as a supplier, but see them as a fundamental part of our social infrastructure. And I think, you know, think of them as the first thought, not an afterthought. And I hope that doesn't sound too emotive, but I have to do my plug for them.
Well done. You just did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, are there any other questions you'd like to ask of Helen while we have her here? Helen, can I just say thank you? Thank you ever so much for giving us your time. Your enthusiasm, your knowledge, your professionalism has just shone through in this interview. So thank you ever so much. You've given us an awful lot to think about. If we have some more thought, perhaps we might write to you and just seek your views on that. But we do thank you most sincerely for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Carol,
for having me.
Sorry, apologies, Helen. Carol might have a late.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I got called away to the door. I'm so sorry. No, I haven't. Thank you. Was I due for another one, Martin? I'm sorry.
No, you weren't, Carol. No, I was
No,
just
that's
summing
lovely.
up. Wondered
No,
if anybody had any.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about that, but it was very nice to hear your views. Thank you, Helen, very much.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you ever so much, Helen.
Okay, bye.
Keep safe. Lovely. Thank you. So Tracy, we have Neil programmed in for what, 3 o'clock?
Yes, he is. He's not arrived in the lobby, in the technical lobby yet. But I know that he said he couldn't make it until 3 o'clock, so he might, he might come on just in time, sort of thing.
Right. So we've got really 4 minutes. Do you think we could sum up what we heard at the conference on November the 5th in 4 minutes? I mean, I clearly Neil is the chief executive of CLES, as they call it, announced his I think resignation as the chief exec on that day. But I did pick up some processes, and those 10 points that Matthew Jackson pointed out as the process of more clearer understanding of procurement and of obtaining social value within contracts, I thought were 10 good points, and I'd like to sort of dig a bit more into those and circulate those to the membership. I don't know if anybody else had any points they wanted to raise from the day.
I've actually emailed them to find out where I can get those 10 key messages, Mark, because I wasn't quick enough to write them down. But I think the morning session, that guy Matthew was very interesting. It was tough going in the morning, I must admit. But the guy from America, Philip Thompson, he was very interesting, very inspiring man.
He certainly was. My goodness, what a task he faced.
Yeah, I wondered if he ever slept. He just seems to be doing everything, doesn't he?
He did. Yeah, and I was also interested, spotted that the freedoms that Wales and Northern Ireland had in shaping their contracts to enhance, build up community wealth in what they were trying to achieve, was another thing that struck me. Yeah. Okay. So Jane tells me she wrote the 10 points down, which is excellent. I wrote them down, but I've just in case they weren't the most accurate, I wouldn't let Tracy take them off me and write them down. But we'll work them into our processes.
Chairman, could I just jump in?
Yes, go on, Mike. You're not. Yeah.
I know you've missed me this afternoon. Quiet and silent. Most unusual, I know. I gotta go now. I've got another meeting to go to. I put in the sidebar, just about to set it out, a few bullet points that I picked up from this afternoon's conversation. Very interesting, very helpful overall, and I'll be attending the other ones in due course. But gotta go now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. All the best then. Cheers.
Okay. Bye-bye now. Right. Any other thoughts on what you heard on the day? I thought the afternoon certainly we got down to the brass tacks of it all. I think several of it's overlapped in several of the sessions. I'm just looking back through my notes here. One thing that struck me from Neil was actually the influencing of the other partners that you work with, and we've heard that this afternoon, that other partners need to be almost on this journey with us in enhancing social value and in building community wealth.
Talk of the devil.
There we are. And there's Neil. Hello, Neil. Can you hear us?
Neil, you're on mute, I think.
Hello, I'm here. I'm very sorry. I was just coming from another meeting. I had to dash to the dash for a convenient break. So sorry about that. Nice to see you.
Hello, Neil. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us. We've had some great sessions, and we're really looking forward to this one. Several of us attended a community wealth building summit there on the 5th. We were just reflecting upon that, points that we've learned, and really how much we enjoyed the conference. Thank you. So thank you for that. Would you like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of your background? I know you are you've just retired from the current job. Is that right?
I'm not till July, and there's been there'll be a long handover. But I'm Neil McInroy. I'm the Chief Executive of the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, the UK's national organisation for local economies, and I will be after 20 years at Clares. I'm resigning in July for yet unknown activities. I'm also 2 days at the moment seconded to the Scottish Government, working on the Community Wealth Building Advisor and the Economic Development Directorate, seeking to advance community wealth building across Scotland and also play into the wider recovery and reform programme. And that's why I'm a little bit late. I was just in a meeting with them just now. And I suppose our work, particularly in community wealth building, is very much at the forefront of ensuring that an economy works for our people and our communities. And a particular aspect of that is the role of public expenditure, public spending, and how that can flow virtually through an economy, and also how we can animate local supply, the development of local supply, through the power of public spending.
Yeah, one of the things I think that came across was that this is a cultural shift within local authorities to think about social value across the whole organisation, to get the whole organisation buying into it, rather than just a procurement department, which is over there in that corner doing that job. We've got a series of questions that we've set out here, and I'm going to ask the different councillors to ask those and any supplementaries that they wish to do, if that's all right with you, Neil.
Perfect.
Carol, I'm going to kick off with you, if we may, please.
Hi there. Hello, Neil.
Hello there, Carol.
Hello. My question's about developing local markets and how you would look at including the voluntary, community and social enterprise sectors in that. He's on mute.
Sorry, there was a noise coming in there. Could you repeat that, Carol? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's about the developing local markets and how we go about including the voluntary, community and social enterprise sectors in that.
Yes. There is a need to identify, first of all, where existing spending goes, and a deep granular understanding of that by geography, by sector, and by organisations that are already in receipt of goods and services demanded by the public sector, including Cornwall Council. So that's the first thing. And then it's start to understand how many and how much of the community voluntary sector are bidding in, and identifying any particular problems in terms of their ability to bid and their capacity to bid. It could be, and it does happen often, that some of the goods and services that you wish to procure are bundled up into a big contract, which is actually quite difficult for the smaller community voluntary sector to apply for. So that's a case of unbundling those contracts wherever you can, and thinking deeply about how you can animate supply to bid into that. It's important, though, that the considerations that you mentioned, it's not really the job of procurement. This is the job for business development, community and voluntary sector development, and a supply question. The demand is what you're creating. I think there's a focus on that supply and ensuring there is that effervescence of supply and a pipeline of ready-made community, voluntary and social enterprise organisations who are fit to bid and can compete and hopefully, in that case, win.
Lovely, interesting, yes. Thank you very much. We've just had a very interesting conversation with the lady from the voluntary sector, and you know, she's hit along, yeah, it seems to run along a theme. It's interesting, thank you.
So that fitness to bid, Neil, would that come, that then would be the sector developing itself, or us working with that sector to develop that fitness?
A bit of both, Martin. I think typically, and I'm not familiar with Cornwall particularly, but I would say that it's not really as much up the sector there can help, but actually some bits of the sector, and I imagine it's the same as it is in other parts of rural UK, is perhaps a little bit unsophisticated, if I can use that word, in terms of the types of he gets involved in. So in that case, I would like to see, specialist social enterprise support organisations or your own business development, economic development team to play a role in building up that sector to be fit to bid. Just giving it to the community voluntary sector itself may find them going down pathways of traditional pathways of the types of things they may get involved in. And so to really grow this, we need to think about the wider gamut of services and goods that they maybe could provide that hitherto they've not. That's where the big dividends come. They might think, oh no, I don't deliver that, so never deliver that in the community voluntary sector. Oh no, I'm not getting into that. Perhaps they could, with a little bit of encouragement and support from people that understand, I think, a more broader suite of economic and business development activity. Okay. In Scotland, for instance, it would be, you have a business gateway service, which is a Scottish government sponsored service, and it under the auspices of the local authority are utilised in a way of animating that supply and making them fit to bid, albeit partnering with the local CVSs or the social alliances that are in those locations. Okay, that's interesting.
We heard from the voluntary sector about co-analysis of the issue really before the kind of co-design of any sort of procurement. So the co-analysis, that we both have a common understanding of what the issue is.
I would say that's a good point. I would call it pre-commissioning, the pre-commissioning conversations and those honest conversations that say, I need this service commissioned, let's have conversations with the sector, let's try and design this service together, and then when the contract's let, they're part of that consortium, if you like.
Okay, thank you. Robin Moorcroft, Councillor Robin Moorcroft.
Good afternoon, Neil, and once again, thank you for last week's summit. Really good day, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Neil, how would you build social value into the tender evaluation process?
We've got the Social Value Act, and what the important thing around social value is that market strength is extraordinarily important. Some bits of the market, and it's different by places, can take more social value weighting. So, say catering as an activity. Typically, catering organisations can take lots of social value weighting in terms of apprenticeships, local jobs, net zero carbon, and other forms of wider social value. And the market might be quite strong in catering in terms of a whole gamut of players, and they're all competing, and they're competing on social value. So in a sense, you can oomph that weighting up. You can think 40, 50% of the weighting, or maybe more, on social value, knowing that there'll be a who will compete, and price is not the only factor here. That wider competition creates that 40 or 50% weighting. It may be something like construction or some other sort of sector. It's a weaker set of market, and you can't push social value, because if you push social value too much, what will happen is the price will balloon, or you'll actually scare people off from the market. So the first thing is to understand the marketplace and the existing strengths of the market. And the second thing is to have a robust social value framework, a generic social value framework, which is capable of flexing according to the strength of the market. And people say, you know, 10% social value weighting, 15% social value weighting. That shouldn't be applied universally. Perhaps 15% where the market's weak, but perhaps in some instances you can boost it up to 60, 70% weighting. And imagine if you're putting a blanket social value weighting in your contracts across the piece and you're offering 50% weighting on the contract, but the market's really strong. The market could really take more social value. Well, actually, you're losing a lot then. You're losing a lot of potential social value that could be accrued because you're not putting enough weighting on it, because you've got this blanket that covers all different sectors. So it's understanding the strength of the markets and then having a robust framework which is capable of being bespoke and boosting up the weighting of particular areas where there's a market strength.
Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
You're welcome.
John, would you like to pick up?
Good afternoon, Neil. I think you may have touched on this question, similar question to the last one. It's about how would you build social value into the contract management process, but you've just done a good job of telling me that. But if you'd like to add any more, it'd be good. I certainly particularly like what you've said about the markets and how we could be actually could be a coup by understanding the strength of the market a lot better. So is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yes, I think monitoring compliance is key here. Once you've got that contract at a particular social value and they're saying they're giving you apprenticeships and they're giving you whatever is being said, that needs to be policed. You need to have a robust contract management process, monitoring and management process that says to the contractor, look, you said you were giving us 15 apprenticeships. Have you done that? Yeah, why have you not done that? There needs to be this policing, and I think that does get a little bit, there's a little bit of slippage there sometimes. You let the contract, everything's hunky-dory, you manage the contract. It's this driving consistently the social value add-ons, if you like, that need to be consistently monitored. And typically there's issues with capacity across local authorities. We're in a bad place, aren't we? Difficult with capacity, but it is important to police that and to make sure that it's monitored and there is compliance. And things like supplier surveys are helpful in terms of them getting to feedback universally about how what they're up to and how they're what they're doing, particularly their own suppliers, so suppliers and suppliers, and how that can be also advance some social value. But that's what I would add to that earlier point, John, this robust monitoring and compliance process around those contracts when they're after they're let and during their activity.
That's excellent points. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you, Neil. We've been sort of looking towards the national TOMS as a measure, as a way of measuring social value, and the social value portal. Do you think that's the right direction to travel for us as a local authority?
Yes, I think it's a useful mechanism, and it's got lots of the indicators there, and obviously flex to what you require in terms of individual contracts. The two things I would say about it is that Cornwall is very different to London Borough Hounslow, and you might have bespoke local aspirations in terms of community benefits, wider social value that are very bespoke to what Newquay or whatever you may require. So I think there's something there that's very bespoke, and I think you need to make sure it's not this generic package. I would also say is that sometimes officers will say to members, oh, we're doing the social value, we've got the social value TOMS in, it's the standard recognised thing, everything's hunky-dory, don't worry about it, councillor, everything's hunky-dory with it. I think it's kind of seen as the industrial standard, and by the industrial standard, it kind of fobs off councillors and fobs off people saying everything's been done hunky-dory. I think it's what sits around the TOMs and the monitoring and the social value weighting and so on, as well as the bespoke nature of the indicators that's key. And, you know, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. In some local authorities we've worked with, you know, people say, oh, we've got the TOMs. Yeah, we've got the TOMs, we've got all that. Social work, we've got all that. It's great. And then you go and you're thinking, well, they're just reporting on it. They're just sticking a few indicators in. The weighting's not there. There's not the oversight of it. So I think that's what I would. It's a good tool. My sense would be that in Cornwall, it's not a difficult thing. You can have your own bespoke social value framework. Tom's is quite expensive. It's talked up, but I mean, it's not rocket science. You can create your own social value framework, your own monitoring process. So, I mean, you know, I would see it in the round, but depending on your own capacity, perhaps there's other more bespoke options out there you could do yourself. And I do kind of prefer it when it's done itself, because in the sense you've got that more ownership of it and it's more relates to your own locality. And I know the distinctive cultural and social and economic milieu of Cornwall is very unique, and I think that should shine through its social value framework.
Yes, we always find ploughing our own furrow very attractive down here now.
Yeah. Well, in Scotland, we think that too. Yeah. And there's no bad thing about that, I don't think.
No. How does the reducing the carbon impact fit with building social value in your experience? We've got to try and achieve both within the sort of same contract, haven't we? Within the same procurement process.
Well, one is I suppose the reducing the length of supply chains is key, and that's, you know, you want to reduce your supply chains, and catering is a classic example. You know, the supplier and supplier of suppliers, and I think in Wales we've been doing some work. You know, it's not just about the company that's based in Wales who's providing catering, it's where do they get all their produce from, and some of these supply chains are awfully over and to be, and it could be a real fill up to local suppliers, local farmers, local producers, local activity to kind of have that supplier built in. Like that's when it comes to food strategies and food networks and so on, but reducing the length of supply chains and subsequent supply chains from there. And secondly, I think you're looking for a whole gamut of net zero carbon policies as a standard in your suppliers. And obviously in the construction frameworks that are now emerging, these are pre-qualification frameworks. Unite the Union has one, for instance, and it's more about local job, but it should also be stipulating carbon policies as a matter of course. Now, they don't have those policies, basically they can't bid. They can't bid. So there's I think it's the policies you're looking for of those organisations, as well as the supply chains and length of supply chains.
Yeah, I understand that. Yes, that's something that we've heard from an earlier contributor. Carol, would you like to carry on, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, this next question was about how we gather evidence and measure the delivery and impact of social value. But I guess that's touching on something you said earlier about, you know, really monitoring the process, and supplier surveys and all those things are in that mix.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that linked to the other point about the strength of markets, and this is where business and enterprise intelligence comes in, is to find a good understanding from a sector exactly what they're doing and the type of wider social value and community benefits that they are is happening in that sector, and that's a good thing to understand from a business enterprise point of view. And business surveys and social enterprise surveys important to kind of find out how they're responding to these wider social and ecological and economic justice questions. And the survey itself of your contractors, I think, is very important to get that broader intelligence, particularly around suppliers of suppliers. I think, you know, you can't maybe stipulate that much in the contracts, but you can, through a very decent survey, find out about their supply chain of their own organisation. Who are your suppliers? Are your suppliers, do they have apprenticeships? Do they employ local people? Have they got the zero carbon policies and so on? So I put a lot of emphasis on intelligence and information and the business development, social enterprise development services, and how they have a good understanding of enterprises within Cornwall, as well as bespoke business enterprise surveys that start to extract that information. And that can be overlaid, of course, with your own contractual information. And then when you're going out to let that tender again, you can actually see a strength and a picture of the market and where you may want to push that tender to in terms of other organisations that are maybe not bidding for the work at the moment, but actually are delivering lots of social value in other ways.
So it seems it's an awful lot, a bit like doing your homework beforehand, really, getting, knowing what's coming up the tracks helps you monitor it after the event. Yeah.
Absolutely. And from a councillor point of view, I always say to councillors is that what's the pipeline of activity and what's coming, what contracts are going to be let next month, and what city deal or other investment money is going to be spent in the next few weeks or months, and understanding what's coming up so that it's bite-sized chunks. Then a contract's coming to let, a big social care contract coming to let. Well, okay, let's get focus on that for the next few weeks because that's coming up to let. We know we've got this infrastructural spending money coming. Let's focus on that and make sure we're getting social value into it. So councillors responsible and committees responsible should be on top of the pipeline and the yearly flow of the ins and outs of contracts and the ins and outs of spending, so that you're on that on a regular basis and the committee's discussing that at a regular basis. Oh, social value, social care contracts coming up. Oh, we've got a catering contract coming up. Oh, we've got this infrastructural spending coming up. We need to get onto that. I think that's the way to oversee this and to ensure that officers and others are following through with your demands and policies as regards maxing out on social value.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.
If I may, so that really goes towards the kind of educating councillors in terms of what social value is and how it can be attained through the procurement process, but also the kind of culture of the whole organisation. So the whole organisation is focused on obtaining social value. Yeah, is that something that you've done with other local authorities, that kind of shifting culture across an organisation?
Very much so. It's a very live work at the moment in our work in Scotland and everywhere else, really. We say that procurement, commissioning, are economic development and social and ecological development activities. And so every single pound that you spend is a economic, social and ecological lever. In fact, it's probably bigger than your economic development budget. And so it has to be seen as a key tool of your entry into by which you can start to shape elements of that market. And so in some occasions, procurement has been lodged within economic development departments, taken out of finance and placed in economic development because it's seen as that important. Certainly needs to be key links. And then commissioning departments, they need to understand the markets that the commissioning service within, and they need to be helped by business or economic development in that, so that their first thought is, I need that service, yeah, I understand there's this thing going on in the market. Let's sit down with business development, economic development team to understand that market a bit more. I've always went with Mary Robinson suppliers. They've always been really good, but is there anyone else there? How have they performed on their social value? Commissioners need to be imbued, because it's a corporate priority that every single pound they're spent is not just about getting the service or good. It's about that wider ripple consequences of that purchase. So training and embedding procurement in economic development is closely aligned. Training commissioners that immediacy of wanting to get that service are also considering wider social value as a matter of course. That culture is so important. And leadership, chief exec, cabinet members, leader, really beating the drum on this. And I know I've seen it happen, you know, where leadership has transformed administration by just going on and on and on about this social value, and now you hear officers who hitherto would just, oh, there's that social value thing, that's procurement stuff, they're now actually actively interested in the topic, and because they can see it as being a fill up to their service and a fill up to their outcomes they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, thank you for that. Robin, do you want to take up the next question?
Yeah, I will do. Thank you. Neil, have you discovered any quick win areas?
Yes, I think quick quote stuff that's below the threshold, where you don't have the legal restrictions or straitjackets. I mean, get right into that below threshold stuff and really use that as a foreshadowing bigger change, if you like. You know, when you've got these quick quotes, you can really say, right, well, we don't really do a massive big tender exercise. We think they're really progressive. We think they're really good social value. Let's get the contract to them. Let's let them 3 bid. And so there's quick quotes, I think, is a really important thing to use, or the sub threshold, as well as I think where your market's strong, Robin, and you're very confident in your set of social value spirited suppliers, I think you can really have a go at that. I mean, I don't know what that would be in Cornwall, but let's just say catering. You've got many catering organisations all across Cornwall. You've got a catering contract come up to let, and you've always went with them, some big company. Let's say, come on, here we can do this quickly. Got lots of suppliers all across this county that can really go for this. Let's really have a test case there. So I think when you've got a strong market and a contract's coming up, there's an early win there. I mean, next week, what contracts are coming up? Let's see what's coming up, and let's see who gets that supply at the moment, and how it could be potentially changed in terms of a set of more socially valued, spirited social enterprise suppliers.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, top tips there. Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
Well, happy to
help. John, would you like to?
Yeah, thanks for that, Neil. Top tips indeed. Just one question. Are there any other key points you think we should be aware of?
You've been very comprehensive questions, and you got right to the heart of it. Key thing, I think the key point here is that don't get bound. Let's not get hijacked by the bureaucracies of these. Really, I think there's a danger it becomes procurement and technical and law, and there's these rules, and it becomes an industry and a sausage machine with not many sausages coming out the end of it. I think, you know, we're now very mature in this agenda. You know, European procurement law is not that restrictive. It's all about increasing competition. It's all about getting more people to the market. Don't let bureaucracy slow you down, I think. You know, there's many examples. There'll be examples you're doing anyway that's fantastic. Let's learn from that and go as fast as you possibly can. And also linking to that, you'll be doing great stuff anyway in Cornwall around some elements of goods and services that you're commissioning or purchasing. Let's find those and learn from those and what went really right, because you'll be doing it anyway. And let's amplify and scale what went very, very well, because I'm sure you're doing good stuff. Let's find those examples, extract them and learn them, sing about them like mad, use them as demonstrators to tell the market this is the kind of thing we want. You know, and I think that's an important tip as well, I suppose.
That's very good. Thank you very much. Learn from good practice.
Absolutely.
We've got to find it. We've got to find it.
Think about it.
Okay. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you for your time today, Neil. I don't know if the members have got any final questions, any final thoughts they would like to put to Neil.
Whereabouts in Scotland do you come from, Neil?
I'm in Manchester, but I'm from the Central Highlands. Actually, I'm from Pitlochry.
I know it well, yeah.
And I always have a great affinity to Cornwall. I think it's the Celtic, and I can see every time I go down there, I love it so much. Better weather, right enough, but yeah, no, I have a bit affinity to Cornwall, and so good luck to you, and thanks very much for inviting me here today. Really enjoyed it. And any help you can give in the future, do not hesitate.
Lovely, thank you.
If I could ask a favour, Neil, we a lot of us wrote down Matthew Jackson's 10 points. I think it was 10 points, and I think we've really quite kind of rehearsed those here today. But I don't know if they could be sent to us rather than us pulling them from our notes. I wonder if we could have those 10 points.
Absolutely. I'll get them to send them through. They're probably written up in a sophisticated way, so I'll get them to send them. Yeah.
It would be really useful. I mean, all of us, I think, wrote them down as something we could use in a practical way within Cornwall Council. But you've shed a tremendous light on social value today. We thank you for the summit, which we all enjoyed. It was some inspiring people, and we thank you for the experience you've showed to us today. We hope to build this into Cornwall and be a little beacon down here right at the very end to to light the way for the others into Southwest. So our ambition is unbounded, and we hope to do as well as we can. So thank you for your time today.
Just one final point, actually. Have you ever wanted to make any connections with the Highlands and Islands and the Highlands and Islands Enterprise and the councils up there? I know there's differences but similarities. Just don't hesitate. You know, there's similarities there, and I'm always keen on creating these connections. But thank you very much for today, and good luck.
Yeah, and we wish you every success with whatever you decide to do.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh, members, I think we've done a reflection on the Community Wealth Building Summit, and so unless there are any other questions immediately, I intend to close the formal session, and we'll move then into an informal question where, if there are observations, perhaps we could spend a little time with our observations of the day that we've just had, and also perhaps some reflections. We'll try and do bit of summing up and then finish ahead of time, which is always a Billy bonus in my book. So would you